Now, President Trump is often included in the strongman era of global leadership, alongside names such as Putin and President Erdogan of Turkey. Erdogan was a modernizing, democratizing leader at first before descending into increasingly authoritarian ways, from purging dozens of thousands of civil servants and judges after a failed coup in 2016 to cracking down on the country's free press. Turkey's economy has since spiraled, but now Istanbul has triggered a political earthquake, voting in favor of the opposition party in a rerun election for mayor of the city. It was David versus Goliath. It is the first time in 25 years that Erdogan's party will not control the city. The new mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, framed his campaign as a fight for democracy. And he tells me that he is not about to confront Erdogan head-on, but he is warning that democracy can no longer be stolen from the people. Mayor İmamoğlu, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It is an incredible situation. You won in the first round with a small fraction, a small percentage. Then the vote was challenged and you had to run again, and you won by a huge margin in the second round. Do you think even more people came out because they were angry that your first win was annulled?
Biz 31 Mart öncesinde
Before March 31st, the first election, we were presented with circumstances that gave us difficulties in promoting ourselves. Subsequent to March 31st, perhaps all those difficulties, negativities, we've had the opportunity to reach everyone, every color, every political personality living in Istanbul, and tell them about our approach to democracy and our vision as a whole. Although we have not been able to level the conditions, we were able to raise our conditions a bit. In my opinion, the people of Istanbul were able to cast their vote more freely. I do not believe that it can be described solely as an angry reaction. It was way more than that. In my view, what had an effect on Istanbul was their belief in democracy and the continuity of democracy. The people of Istanbul demonstrated the legitimacy of the election, and the election was protected. No one will be able to interfere with elections to such an extent again.
Mr. Mayor, you keep talking about democracy, and that is why so many people around the world are interested in this result. Even though you are the mayor of Istanbul, democracy, many would say, has been compromised over the last many years. You have many journalists in jail, many civil servants in jail, many judges. Some are accused of partaking in the coup, but others are just being thrown into jail because of opposition to the ruling Erdogan party. Can your victory change any of that? Can you bring back at least some democracy into the public domain?
en büyük katkısı bu.
That was its biggest contribution. As well as our election, this has turned into a valuable test. At the same time, the Istanbul election and the test of democracy serve to refresh the hopes of Generation Z. I witness and feel that mostly in the youth. The illegal, unlawful, undemocratic period subsequent to March 31st, and the fact that it was corrected by the citizens, the people themselves, in my view, is an exemplary one for the rest of the world. June 23rd was an important test, and the result was a success.
Just explain to me about your campaign, because you've written about it, and it's a very unusual campaign. Instead of mass big rallies and access to state media, you did a much more, in the West we say, retail politics. You talked to hundreds of thousands of citizens. What was your campaign exactly?
Organik bir kampanyaydı.
It was an organic campaign. It was completely true. It was based on making physical contact and forming dialogue with the people. That is because the channels of communication in Turkey are rather closed to the opposition. I was able to appear on the state television channel only once, and that was 3 days before the second election on June 23rd. That was the situation we faced as the opposition. In complete contrast, the other candidate had every means to communicate as he wished. That meant we had no choice but to cover distances, districts, streets. That meant working 17 to 18 hours a day. A 6-month-long panting campaign. We formed dialogues and achieved access. I believe we ran an extraordinary digital campaign too. The one-to-one campaigning model is thousands of years old. We achieved that here in the 21st century, both physically in the streets and also in digital platforms and over social media. We used a political, non-partisan language. We reached out to all political parties, not just to the Republican People's Party and our ally, the Good Party. We promised that we would be completely transparent and we would include everyone in the process.
Mr. Mayor, your slogan was "Everything will be fine." And that's a pretty hopeful slogan. It's very different for Turkey. But I wonder whether you are concerned that actually things might not be so fine. And President Erdogan, who suffered a massive humiliation by this loss, having forced a rerun, having seen you win by even more than you won the first time round, whether he will try to interfere with what you want to do, whether he will try to subvert your plans. What do you expect from President Erdogan going forward now?
Milletin iradesinin
June 23rd showed us that no one, no individual or power can stand in the way of the will of the people. No politician has the luxury to ignore that fact. They are going to see it. In my speech on the night of the election, when I declared that I had won the election, I also declared that I had opened all doors wide and that I wanted to provide services jointly. I made the call to the Mr. President, the head of the state, to that end. I made the same call to other politicians as well. Serving a city cannot be restricted to a political party or certain politics. That process ended with the end of the election process. The needs and expectations of the citizens then take priority. This is what democracies require too. I promised that I would implement that promise without fault. I then also said the following: whoever decides not to serve the people and prioritizes their political future instead, I would make it known and unveil it using transparency. That is not a threat, it is how things should be. There is an extraordinary sense of longing for democracy here, and a mass of people who take ownership of it. Therefore, if Mr. Erdogan, he was elected 1 year ago, he has more than 4 years ahead of him. We have just been elected, and we have 5 years ahead of us. Turning this process into a race for serving the people would leave more positive notes in the memories of the people. Opting for the opposite would have a negative effect on the political futures of the people. My expectation is that Mr. Erdogan will respond positively to our call.
Well, look, I see you extending a hand of peace and goodwill to President Erdogan. But he has also said in the past, and remember, of course, he was famously mayor of Istanbul, that whoever wins Istanbul wins Turkey. He considers this position vital. You will now have access to all the city records, and there have been many allegations of cronyism and corruption within the Erdogan regime. Should he fear that the new mayor, you, will launch investigations into alleged corruption, cronyism, which of course he's denied all these years?
I would first like to express my approach to politics. More than my or my party's victory in Istanbul, what I have in my mind is the victory of Turkey. Victory by a country must be more valuable than victory by an individual or a party. Right now I'm talking about plans to make Turkey win. Extending the hand for peace would be to the benefit of the country. I will persist on that. On the other hand, I will never extend my hand for peace in a secret room behind doors. I will do it in front of the public. I want people to see which hand is being extended and which hand is being rejected in the most transparent way.
So just lastly, do you plan to investigate the allegations against him?
That, of course, is not my responsibility, not my job. That is a judicial process. But any troubling situation in Istanbul, and I would not, of course, know if such issues would relate to Mr. Erdogan as an individual or not, and I would not want to think that they would be. But I am the mayor of Istanbul, and any negativity that is present in Istanbul, any transaction counter to the benefit of the people, will most certainly be investigated and scrutinized. We are going to subject the corporate structure of the greater Istanbul municipality and the financial organization of all of its companies to the scrutiny of auditing companies with international expertise. This was our promise to the people, and we are going to fulfill it as soon as we return to the office. Istanbul is an international city, and we want it to have ties with Europe and the rest of the world, which is very important for us. I do not think this is related to Mr. Erdogan as an individual. They may relate to his party or to the administrators of his party. How the process would progress is a matter for the judiciary, not my personal responsibility, of course.
Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, thank you so much indeed for joining me.
Ben teşekkür
And I thank you. Do continue to follow Turkey and its democracy. No doubt everything will be fine.
Her şey çok güzel olacak.
And that's your slogan. Thank you very much.